がジムじゃないか。なぜ？早い！とても人間が操縦してるとは思えない。
Okay, I didn't think I'd be reviewing another Gundam game so soon, but Saturn imports, they're cheap. This is Mobile Suit Gundam Side Story The Blue Destiny 1, holy crap that's a stupidly long title, and it is one of no less than 6 Gundam games on the Sega Saturn. It was the first in a trilogy of Gundam first-person shooter arcadey sort of mech warrior games, and while it's pretty fun, it's got some problems. The story follows a voiceless, faceless gym pilot, so you're basically one of the single most expendable Federation soldiers ever. Go team. And your job is to shoot all the Zakus! Okay, well there's actually a little bit more to the story involving a experimental mobile suit project to give non-new types new type powers, but essentially it's just you running around shooting all the Zakus ever, and that's about it. The gameplay is simple. You are dropped into an environment, and your job is to clear out all the other enemy mobile suits. Technically, there's 2 missions which have you defending certain targets, as well as a mission where you're supposed to destroy a carrier, except that you can let that carrier get away, and so long as all your defensive targets remain alive, it doesn't really matter. Because at the end of the day, the mission ends as soon as you kill all the mobile suits. So the gameplay itself does end up feeling very one-note, but at the same time, while it's very one-note, it is enjoyable, provided you don't mind that it is repetitive. The controls are simple. You move your gym with the directional pad, look left or right with the shoulder buttons, adjust your aiming angle with the X button, and then immediately use none of those 3 buttons because there's an auto-targeting button, which completely defeats the purpose of manually aiming ever. Because while you can manually target things, it's very finicky. Using the shoulder buttons to turn around is kinda clunky, especially if you're aiming in the heat of combat. You never have to ever adjust the height of your targeting, and you've got an auto-target button which pretty much guarantees you're gonna hit your opponent. It does seem a little bit redundant, like they had too many buttons and didn't really know what to do with them, and that's kind of a shame. I would have liked a dedicated sword button, so that's a little bit disappointing. But beyond some controller redundancies, the rest of the gameplay is fairly simple, straightforward, and it works well. You shoot with the A button, you jump with the B button. If you hold down the A button after you've shot, you'll fire your Vulcans, and with the Y button, you can use a grenade from your very limited stash. So you have to be very selective about how you want to use its splash damage. Double tap any direction on the directional pad, you'll dash left and right, but you have to be wary about conserving your verniers. If you run out of boost in a pinch, you are basically dead in the water. If you double boost towards your opponent, you will activate an automatic melee attack, and is probably your most effective attack. Now let's get to the actual complaining of the review, because what is critiquing without criticism? Well, first off, the last 2 levels are copy-pasted. Like, seriously, you're in the exact same environment, defending the exact same targets. The only difference is the mobile suits you run into. Additionally, there is a level where you are forced to fight an enemy that straight up outclasses you, except that you can completely drop your controller and still succeed at the mission. Because it doesn't matter how well you do, you will automatically pass that mission. That annoys me. I want to at least have to try in order to succeed. Another problem is the environments. While they work well enough, they just feel way too small, and if you cross the mission border, you automatically game over. That's a bit annoying, especially when you're focusing mainly on your opponents, as opposed to the mission boundaries, hoping you don't fail instantly. I also found it annoying that you are equipped with a map, but you have to pause in order to use it. So it's kind of awkward and breaks flow if you're trying to figure out where your target is. I noticed that the AI, while very ruthless, especially on the harder difficulties, also has a few quirks to it. Like if you start laying into them with the Vulcan gun, they'll just start walking up to you and attempting to melee you, when you can very quickly just melee them back or shoot them in the face and repeat. It was a bit odd. It also feels like there's not a ton of variance in the mobile suits. Including the boss that you can't lose to, there is a grand total of 4 mobile suits you fight. You fight the blue gym, which you can't lose against, you fight Zaku's, you fight a couple Doms, and then you fight some of the aquatic units, which I keep forgetting what they're called, but that's the complete roster of things you fight. 5 if you include the gym you pilot, but you don't fight any of those. So it's a little bit scant on content as well. And while it does sound like I'm dumping on this game a lot, it is fun. It just has a lot of flaws that might be hard to look past. I definitely enjoyed the gameplay, but there are definitely a lot of stumbling blocks that make this a lot more annoying than it should be. Overall though, the gameplay is fun and it controls really well. The overall presentation of the game is kinda average. All the mobile suits look well enough, but the environments do feel a little bit bland and just flat and empty. Likewise, the soundtrack isn't wildly interesting, and often I didn't hear any of the soundtrack playing while I was actually playing the game. In addition, if you're the kind of person who gets annoyed by a game's length, this game might not be for you, because this game has 5 missions. They're all fairly short and there's no way to save in between if you want to take breaks. You have to do it all in one shot. Although that won't take very long because you can finish the entire game in less than an hour pretty easily. There were, however, a couple really neat features with this game. It being part of a trilogy, it was designed so that you could take your save data from the first game and second game and plug them into the third game, so you can continue your career, raise through the ranks, and provided you get to the highest rank in every mission, you unlock a bonus mission on the final game. But you have to be invested in the trilogy to get to that point. And maybe I'm crazy here, but I think they probably could have fit all 3 games onto a single disc. It definitely feels like they took one remotely decent-sized game and chopped it into thirds that you had to pay independently for, and oh my god, it's .hack all over again. And yes, I am bitter I still can't complete .hack GU because I don't have the last disc because it's so smegging expensive. But the nice thing about this game is it's not expensive. Like, even remotely, you can get each disc independently for about $15. Incidentally, there was a post-release trilogy pack which contained all 3 discs, as well as a bonus disc that contained like artwork and character models. And ironically, you can get that trilogy box set for about the same price as any one independent disc in the series. And then at least you get kind of one decently sized game. In the end, do I recommend this game? Well, this game definitely does have a lot of problems. And if you're the kind of person who is annoyed by length, this won't be your cup of tea. It's not a bad game. It plays well enough, the controls are smooth, and the gameplay is fun, if a little one note. This game is also very import friendly. You can pick it up and play without any problems in knowing the language, because there's very little dialogue and what little there is has to do with the story. If you're only aiming to pick up one game in this trilogy though, I would avoid this one. This one felt like the weakest of the entire trilogy. I would aim more for the third one, just because it felt like it had a slight bit more variance in terms of missions and environments. But overall, for a fairly cheap price, this isn't a bad import, especially if you're a Gundam fan.
Machine トラブルか。何にしても助かったぜ。